Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to be talking about something super useful, especially if you're looking to boost your English skills.
Ooh, sounds intriguing. I'm all ears.
Well, have you ever felt like you're just not quite up to speed when it comes to discussing current events? Like maybe you struggle to find the right words or structure your thoughts in a way that really gets your point across.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. It's like you have
Yeah.
all these thoughts swirling around in your head, but they just don't seem to come out right.
Exactly. And that's where this deep dive comes in. We're going to be taking a look at this really cool mock episode of an educational English podcast called Breaking News English with Marco and Erica. They use a really fun format, kind of like a simulated news broadcast with visuals and interactive elements.
Oh, that sounds pretty engaging.
It totally is. And the whole idea is to help you learn the vocabulary and conversation skills you need to talk about the news in English, like a pro.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people could benefit from that, especially those who are trying to improve their English for professional or academic purposes.
Absolutely. So let's start with the basics. We all know staying informed is important, but sometimes it feels like we're just bombarded with news from all directions. You know what I mean?
I hear ya. It can be totally overwhelming.
So how does this podcast, Breaking News English, help us cut through all that noise and have meaningful conversations about what's really happening in the world?
Well, they have a really smart approach. They start by building a solid foundation, focusing on vocabulary.
Makes sense. You got to know the words before you can use them, right?
Exactly. So they have this segment called Essential News Vocabulary, where they break down all the key terms you need.
Ooh, like what?
They have categories like news sources, so you know where the information is coming from.
Right, because that makes a huge difference in how you interpret it.
Totally. And then they have types of news, so you can distinguish between, a political debate versus a natural disaster versus a tech breakthrough.
Yeah, each of those would have its own specific vocabulary, right? Like you wouldn't talk about a hurricane the same way you talk about a new smartphone.
Exactly. And then they have this category called useful verbs, which I think is super helpful.
Oh, tell me more about those.
Well, think about it. Instead of just saying the reporter said something, you could say the journalist revealed, or the analyst speculated, or the source confirmed. See how those verbs add so much more depth and nuance to your language.
Ooh, I like that. It definitely paints a more vivid picture.
And it makes you sound more confident and sophisticated too, which is
Mhm.
always a plus, right?
Totally agree. Now, I'm curious about those news sources you mentioned earlier. Why is it so important to pay attention to where the news is coming from?
Well, it all comes down to credibility. Let's say you're reading about a new scientific study. If it's published in a reputable, peer-reviewed journal, that gives it a lot more weight than if you just saw it on some random blog. Right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'd be way more likely to believe something from, like, the New York Times or the BBC than, I don't know, some random Facebook post.
Exactly. So knowing the source helps you evaluate the information and decide how much trust you want to place in it. It's all part of becoming a more informed and discerning consumer of news.
So it's not just about understanding the words, it's about understanding the context, too. Like, where did this information come from? Who's saying it? What's their agenda?
You got it. It's
Yeah.
like putting on your detective hat and doing a little bit of background research before you form an opinion.
That's a great analogy. It makes it sound kind of fun, actually.
Well, it should be fun. Learning about the world and being able to discuss it intelligently shouldn't feel like a chore.
I totally agree. Okay, so we've touched on news sources and useful verbs. What about those types of news? How does that category help us in our quest for better English conversation skills?
Well, it helps you recognize the specific vocabulary and nuances associated with different types of news. For example, if you're talking about a political election, you might use terms like candidates, polling, campaign, debates, votes.
Right, whereas if you're talking about a natural disaster, you'd be using words like earthquake, hurricane, evacuation, rescue efforts, damage assessment.
Exactly. So by understanding these different categories, you can tailor your language to the specific topic at hand and sound more like a native speaker who's really in tune with current events.
This is making so much sense. Now, before we move on, I have to ask, out of all those useful verbs, do you have any favorites? Any that really stand out to you?
That's a tough one. There are so many good ones. But investigate always grabs my attention.
Oh, yeah. Investigative journalism is so important, especially these days when it feels like there's so much misinformation flying around.
Totally agree. And to be able to say this issue is being investigated or journalists are investigating these claims, it just adds a layer of seriousness and credibility to the conversation.
And it shows you're engaged, you're paying attention, you're not just accepting everything at face value. You're like, hold on, let's dig a little deeper here.
Exactly. And that's what we want, right? To be informed, critical thinkers who can analyze the news and form our own opinions.
Absolutely. Now, I noticed Breaking News English also goes beyond vocabulary and provides frameworks and phrases specifically for discussing the news.
Oh, yeah. They're all about giving you the tools to express your opinions effectively. Like they emphasize structuring your thoughts in a way that's clear, logical, and respectful, even when you're talking about sensitive topics.
Okay, so it's not just about blurting out your opinion, it's about presenting it in a more reasoned and persuasive way.
Exactly. It's like instead of just saying, I think this is bad,
Yeah.
you're actually laying out your argument, supporting it with evidence, and acknowledging other viewpoints.
That makes a lot of sense. It helps you avoid those heated arguments that go nowhere, you know?
Right. And it shows you're willing to engage in a thoughtful and respectful dialogue.
So what kind of frameworks are we talking about here? Can you give me an example?
Sure. They suggest starting by introducing the topic, then stating your opinion clearly. Then you provide reasons and evidence to support your view, and finally, you acknowledge alternative perspectives.
So it's like a step-by-step guide to having a productive conversation about current events. I like that.
Yeah, it's super helpful.
Okay, can you walk me through how this would work in a real conversation? Like, let's say we're talking about, I don't know, a recent news story about climate change.
Okay, great example. So you could start by saying something like, hey, have you been following the news about those devastating wildfires in California? It's really got me thinking about climate change.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Now, what about stating my opinion?
You could say, honestly, I'm getting really concerned. I think we need to take more aggressive action to address this issue.
Strong statement. How do I back that up?
You could add, the scientific evidence is pretty overwhelming at this point, and we're already seeing the impacts all around us.
That definitely strengthens the argument. But what about those who might disagree? You know, the folks who say climate change is a hoax or whatever.
That's where acknowledging other perspectives comes in. You could say, I know some people might argue that the science is still uncertain, but I think the evidence speaks for itself.
So it's about presenting a balanced view, even if you strongly disagree with the other side.
Exactly. It shows you're open-minded and willing to engage in a respectful dialogue, even when the topic is controversial.
That's a really helpful tip, especially in today's world where it feels like everyone is so polarized.
Right. We need more of that, those respectful conversations where people actually listen to each other and try to understand different points of view.
Totally agree. Now, we've covered vocabulary and frameworks, but how do we actually put these skills into practice? Does Breaking News English offer any guidance on that?
They do. They have a segment called Interactive Practice, where they present real news headlines and encourage you to pause and practice discussing them.
Wait, really? That's awesome.
It is. It's like a mini simulation of a real-life conversation about current events.
So it's like they give you the prompt, and then you have to come up with your own responses using all the tools you've learned.
Exactly. It's a great way to apply what you've learned and see how it all comes together.
I love that. What kind of headlines did they use?
Let's see. They have one about, let me check my notes. Okay. They have one about a new technology that makes solar power more efficient, and another about an international sporting event that broke attendance records.
Ooh, those are both pretty interesting. Which one do you want to tackle?
How about the solar power one? It feels particularly relevant right now with all the focus on climate change and renewable energy.
Sounds good to me. So let's pretend we're just having a casual conversation about this news. How would I bring it up?
You could say something like, hey, did you hear about that breakthrough in solar technology? Pretty cool, huh?
Okay, nice and casual. And then how would you respond?
I might say, yeah, I saw that. It was all over the news. Apparently, it makes solar power way more efficient. That's got to be good for the environment, right?
For sure. Now, how do I transition into expressing my opinion using that framework we discussed earlier?
Well, you could say something like, I'm really excited about this. I think it has the potential to be a real game changer in the fight against climate change.
Okay, that's a good start, but I need to back it up, right? Give some reasons why I think this is so great.
Exactly. You could say something like, this could really help us reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. Plus, it could make clean energy more accessible to people around the world.
Those are strong arguments, but what if someone brings up the cost? You know, new technologies are always expensive, especially in the beginning.
That's a great point. And that's where you can acknowledge that concern and offer a counterpoint. You could say, I know implementing new technologies can be costly, but I think the long-term benefits for the environment and the economy outweigh the initial investment.
That's a really helpful way to frame it. It's not just about the immediate costs, it's about the bigger picture.
Precisely. It's about thinking long-term and considering all the factors involved.
This has been super insightful so far. I'm already feeling more confident about discussing current events in English. But before we move on, does Breaking News English cover anything else that would be helpful for our listeners?
They do. They have a section on common media terms that's really useful for understanding the language of news broadcasts and articles. We can delve into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Perfect. I'm eager to learn more about those terms and how they can help me sound even more like a seasoned news consumer.
They're like the secret code to decoding the world of news and media. Get ready to crack the code.
I'm ready.
You know those common media terms?
Yeah.
I think it's really clever what Breaking News English is doing there.
Oh, how so?
They're not just teaching vocabulary, right?
Right.
They're giving you the keys to a deeper understanding.
Okay, I like that.
A deeper understanding of how the media works.
That's true. It's like they're making us more aware.
Exactly. More informed.
Yeah.
Like savvy news consumers.
Savvy. I like that word.
Right. Think about it.
Right.
Terms like live coverage
Mm-hmm.
or exclusive report or press conference,
Ooh, press conference. Yeah.
those aren't just labels, right?
Yeah, they definitely carry weight.
They influence how we perceive the information.
It's true. Like breaking news
Yeah.
or an exclusive.
Yes. It grabs your attention.
It makes you think it's super important.
Exactly. And being aware of those things
Yeah.
helps us filter all the information.
It's like a fire hose sometimes.
It is. So we can focus on what really matters.
Okay, so we're more savvy news consumers.
Mhm.
How does that help us in conversations about current events?
Well, imagine you're talking to a friend
Okay.
and you're discussing like a political scandal.
Ooh, juicy.
And you could just drop in a phrase.
Yeah.
Did you see the press conference?
Hmm.
Or there's a leaked document. You know, it shows you're not just absorbing information.
Right.
You're actively engaging with it.
You sound in the know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially, for someone learning a new language.
That's important.
It's about finding your voice,
Love that.
contributing to the conversation.
It's so cool that Breaking News English blends language learning with, like, bigger ideas.
Mm-hmm. Media literacy.
Yeah. Critical thinking.
Yes, I love that.
It's brilliant.
They get it.
They get it.
Language isn't just words and grammar.
Yeah.
It's about how we use it to interact with the world.
It's true. Especially these days.
Information overload.
Too much information.
So
They're giving us the tools to, deal with it all.
it's a mental toolkit.
Yes. To navigate this media landscape.
Exactly. They encourage you to question things,
Mm-hmm.
to consider other perspectives,
It's important.
to be aware of biases.
Yes. I was just reading about filter bubbles online
Oh, yeah.
where you only see stuff that agrees with you.
Scary, right?
Yeah. It is.
So Breaking News English.
Yeah.
They emphasize seeking out diverse sources,
Mm.
critically evaluating what we see.
Break out of the echo chamber.
Yes,
Ooh, it's so easy to get stuck in there.
it is. And it's not just about different sources.
Okay.
It's also about how they frame things.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Are they balanced
Mm-hmm.
or are they pushing an agenda?
It's about reading between the lines.
Exactly. Developing that critical thinking.
You can't just accept things at face value anymore.
No, you got to be discerning.
Discerning.
It's a life skill.
It really is.
So for our listener
Yes.
who's working on their English,
Mm-hmm.
what's the big takeaway here?
That's a good question.
I think it's that language is powerful.
Okay.
It's not just about communicating information,
Mm-hmm.
but shaping our understanding.
Oh, I like that. It's deeper than I thought.
Right. Learning the language of the news,
Mhm.
it's more than just vocabulary.
Okay.
You're developing a more critical perspective.
It's like you're becoming more aware of the world around you.
Exactly. A more active global citizen,
I love that.
able to understand these complex issues.
It's about more than just learning English.
Yes. It's about using it to engage with the world.
This has been eye-opening.
I know, right?
I feel like I have a whole new set of tools.
Like that toolkit.
Yes.
Ah.
Okay, before we wrap up this part,
Mm-hmm.
anything else from Breaking News English that our listener would find valuable?
Well, They have a segment where they put it all together.
Okay.
The vocabulary, the frameworks, the media savvy, and they have a mock conversation
Oh,
about a current event.
that sounds really useful.
Yeah, like seeing it all in action.
Let's do that next.
Perfect.
Okay, so that mock conversation from Breaking News English where they bring everything together.
Yeah.
I'm really curious.
It's like a master class,
Ooh,
in discussing current events.
cool. So which news story are they using?
They chose the one about solar power.
Okay, the one about the new technology?
Yeah, making solar power more efficient.
Right, right.
It's a good one.
It is, because you can talk about
Yeah.
science,
Mm-hmm.
technology,
Economics.
even environmental policy.
It covers a lot.
It does. So they use all those vocabulary terms,
Oh, yeah.
like scientific breakthrough, renewable energy,
For sure.
sustainable development.
All the good stuff.
And what about those discussion frameworks?
They use those too.
Okay, cool.
Like one of the speakers starts by
Yeah.
saying how excited they are
Okay.
about this new technology.
They state their opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That it could be a game changer.
And then they give reasons.
They do.
Yeah.
Like the potential benefits
Okay.
for the environment
Mm-hmm.
and for the economy.
So smart. Do they talk about counter-arguments?
They do.
Mm-hmm.
The other speaker mentions
Yeah.
that it might be expensive.
Right. New technology usually is,
Exactly.
especially for developing countries.
It's a valid point.
It is.
And that's where the critical thinking comes in.
Oh, I see.
So you're not just getting one side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
You're considering all the angles.
What happens next? What do they say?
The first speaker
Mm-hmm.
acknowledges the cost concern,
Okay.
but they say the long-term benefits
Okay.
outweigh the initial costs.
Smart.
They even say it's an investment in our future.
Ooh, I love that.
That's a good one.
It is. It takes it beyond just the money.
Exactly. It connects it to a larger purpose.
That's something anyone can use, right?
Mhm.
In any conversation.
For sure.
Yeah.
When you connect things to shared values,
Okay.
you can create common ground
Right, right.
and have a more productive conversation.
This is so helpful. So if our listener wanted to practice these skills,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give?
I'd say start small.
Okay.
Choose a news story you're interested in
Okay.
and summarize it for a friend. And then
Mhm.
practice expressing your opinion about it. Use that clear structure we talked about.
Great starting point.
And as you get more comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
you can start using
Yeah.
all that cool vocabulary.
Love it. Any last words of wisdom?
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Oh, that's important.
Just keep practicing.
Mm-hmm.
Keep expanding that comfort zone.
Yes. And keep the conversation flowing.
Exactly.
This has been such a great deep dive.
I know, it really has.
From vocabulary to critical thinking.
It's all connected.
It is. So listener,
Yes.
keep learning
Keep practicing.
and keep those conversations going.
The world needs your voice.
Until next time.
See ya.